My mom's secret plan made me the girl she always wanted. The soft glow of the city lights outside filtered through the half-closed blinds of Alex's apartment, casting long shadows across the room. His small, cluttered apartment, a sanctuary from the world, was both familiar and foreign to him. It was a space he spent his days in, but only at night did it become a canvas for his hidden desires. Here, in this quiet, nondescript place, Alex could let go of the rigid persona he wore during his 9-to-5 job. In the comfort of his own space, Alex could shed the skin of a serious, straight-laced marketing professional and transform into someone else, someone freer, more authentic. Alex wasn't a crossdresser by accident. No, this was something he had known about himself for years, even when he didn't fully understand it. As a child, he had been drawn to the textures, the colors, and the elegance of feminine clothing. While his peers were obsessed with action figures and sports, Alex found himself captivated by his mother's wardrobe, the soft drape of her dresses, the delicate touch of her perfume lingering in the air. But he buried those feelings, tucked them away, because his family didn't understand. Growing up in a conservative household, where traditional roles were sacred, any deviation from that norm was met with confusion, if not outright disapproval. The idea of being anything but the model son and brother felt impossible. But as the years went on, Alex couldn't suppress the urges anymore. His teenage years were spent in secret, dressing in the privacy of his room, trying on clothes he'd swiped from the laundry. The sensation of fabric against his skin, the allure of a different self in the mirror, it all felt too right. But still, he kept it hidden. Only late at night, when the apartment was empty, did Alex dare to embrace that part of himself, and even then, it was always fleeting. A sense of shame would creep in, so he'd quickly change back, afraid of being caught, afraid of who he might be. Now, as an adult, Alex had come to terms with this secret part of his identity, yet it still remained a secret. He'd learned to navigate the world of corporate life while keeping his true self locked away behind a facade. By day, Alex was just another marketing professional. His office was clean, sterile, and orderly. Everything about him screamed the ideal, professional young man. But by night, he would retreat to his apartment, where he could be free. The collection of dresses, heels, makeup, and wigs that he had slowly accumulated over the years was stashed in a small closet. Each item held a piece of his soul. Each dress, each color, each item of makeup a silent whisper of the woman he longed to be. His girlfriend, Emma, had no idea. They had been dating for over a year, and Alex had been careful, so careful, to keep a secret from her. He loved her, truly. She was kind, warm, and incredibly supportive. But he was terrified of what she would think if she found out about his crossdressing. The shame he felt for his hidden passion was overwhelming, and he feared it would destroy everything between them. What would Emma think if she knew the truth? Would she still love him? Or would she see him as a freak? These questions gnawed at his mind as he watched her laugh and smile, completely unaware of the internal battle he fought every day. Tonight was supposed to be a quiet evening. Emma had mentioned that she'd be staying late at work, finishing up a presentation. That gave Alex a rare window of opportunity, a chance to be himself without the fear of being caught. His heart raced with anticipation as he looked over at the dresser where his clothes were neatly folded, waiting. He had been thinking about this moment for days, knowing it would be the only chance he would get to truly express the side of him that had remained buried for so long. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of traffic outside. The setting sun cast a warm, golden light through the window, and Alex stood still, absorbing the calm. He was alone, finally, truly alone, and in this solitude he could transform. He moved towards the closet with careful steps, feeling both excitement and dread swirl in his chest. His fingers brushed against the soft fabric of a pale pink dress he had recently bought. He had spent hours choosing it, making sure it was perfect, an elegant, timeless piece that felt like it belonged to someone else. Someone stronger, someone more confident. As he held the dress in his hands, the rush of emotions was overwhelming. There was a sense of freedom, yes, but also fear. What if Emma walked in? What if the doorbell rang? What if everything came crashing down in a moment of weakness? But tonight, for a few hours, Alex could escape it all. He could become the girl he had always wanted to be, the one who had been hiding beneath the surface for years. He quickly undressed, and as the fabric of the dress slid over his body, the transformation began. The sensation was indescribable. The smoothness of the fabric against his skin, the way it hugged his figure, it felt like stepping into a new skin. The makeup came next: foundation, mascara, lipstick. Each stroke of the brush, each dab of the sponge, was a step further into the person he had only ever dared to dream about. His hands trembled as he applied eyeliner, the line growing thicker as his reflection took on more and more of the feminine features he had always admired from afar. When he finished, he stepped back and looked in the mirror. A stranger stared back at him. But it wasn't just any stranger, it was the girl he had always longed to be. He inhaled sharply, his breath catching in his throat. The person in the mirror looked nothing like the man who had walked into the room earlier. She looked confident, radiant, and most of all alive. It was as if, for a brief moment, he could escape his fears, his doubts, and live as the woman he truly felt inside. But as quickly as the joy came, it was replaced by doubt. A sense of panic started to rise in his chest. What if Emma came home early? What if the neighbors heard the sound of heels clicking across the floor? His hands fumbled with the dress, the sensation of the fabric slipping beneath his fingers like a reminder of how fragile this moment was. The thrill of transformation coursed through Alex's veins, but it was tinged with an undeniable sense of unease. As he stood before the mirror, gazing at the reflection of the girl he had become, his heart raced in a mixture of excitement and dread. He had always loved this feeling, the way the makeup accentuated his features, the way the dress hugged his body, but the fear always lingered. What if Emma came home unexpectedly? What if she noticed the subtle changes, the soft pink tint to his lips, the long lashes, the delicate curves of the dress? His pulse quickened at the thought. Alex tried to steady himself, closing his eyes for a moment to breathe. He was alone, in control. This was his time. Yet, the fear that someone might intrude on his perfect escape never fully dissipated. It was as though he were playing a dangerous game with fate, daring the universe to expose him at his most vulnerable. Was this how Emma would see him if she knew the truth? Was he a liar, a fraud pretending to be someone he was not? Or was this simply another side of him, hidden from the world but undeniable to him? For a fleeting moment, the guilt over his secret was almost unbearable. Emma had always been so supportive of him, so loving. She had never shown a hint of judgment, always accepting him for who he was, and yet here he was, keeping something so important hidden. What would happen if she found out? Could their relationship withstand the truth? Or would she turn away in disgust, unable to accept the side of him that he could barely accept himself? The mirror seemed to mock him as he stared at his reflection, this person who seemed to exist only in moments like these. There was no way to go back now. This was him, the girl he longed to be. But the fear that gripped him every time Emma wasn't around was an invisible chain, locking him in a constant state of anxiety. He lifted the delicate lace of his dress, feeling the fabric swish against his skin as he moved. Each step in the heels made him feel both confident and fragile at the same time. The click-clack of his shoes echoed through the quiet apartment, almost too loud in the silence. He always loved the way heels made him feel, taller, more elegant, but they were also a constant reminder of the person he had to hide from the world. Each step was a tightrope walk, balancing between exhilaration and terror. His fingers brushed over the glossy finish of his nails, painted a soft shade of pink, and he marveled at how different everything felt. The makeup had transformed his face into something new, the bold eyeliner, the smudged mascara, the soft blush. But it wasn't just the physical transformation, it was the emotional weight of stepping into this persona. When he dressed as a man, he was just Alex. But when he donned the dress and makeup, he became someone else entirely, someone he could only dream of being. As he stood there, staring at his reflection, the excitement bubbled up inside of him. The woman in the mirror was beautiful, confident, everything he had always wanted to be. For a moment, he allowed himself to believe in this version of himself, to feel the weightlessness of the character he had become. But then, the doubts crept back in. What if Emma didn't love this version of him? What if this was all just a fantasy, something that didn't belong in the real world? The apartment was silent, and Alex's nerves were on edge. He couldn't stop glancing at the clock. Time was ticking, and Emma was due home soon. The thought of her walking through the door, catching him in the middle of his transformation, sent a cold wave of panic over him. His heart raced as he wondered how much longer he had before she arrived. He wandered around the apartment, trying to focus on something other than the impending tension. The shoes clicked against the hardwood floor as he moved from room to room, searching for something, anything, to take his mind off the looming possibility of Emma's return. But nothing seemed to distract him. It was as if the world outside had stopped, and all that mattered was the secret he was hiding. The wardrobe, his sanctuary, called to him. He stared at the closet door, where a new set of clothes lay waiting for him, another transformation just within reach. He could change again, try something new, or maybe even go further than he ever had before. But the fear of being caught overshadowed his desire to continue. A sudden sound, just the creak of a floorboard, made him freeze. His breath caught in his throat. Was it Emma? Had she returned early? The sound of footsteps came closer, and Alex's body tensed, his heart pounding in his chest. He quickly rushed to the door, checking the locks. Everything was secure. It wasn't Emma. It was just the house settling, the wind playing tricks on his mind. But the anxiety remained, suffocating him in the stillness. The longer he stayed in the dress, the more his thoughts spiraled. He needed to get back to reality. He needed to take off the wig, wipe off the makeup, and return to the Alex that Emma knew. But each time he reached for the makeup remover or the brush, he hesitated. The reflection in the mirror, the woman he had become, felt like a distant dream, a vision of freedom he couldn't let go of. He was standing on the edge of something irreversible. The more time he spent in this identity, the harder it would be to go back. But was that so wrong? Wasn't this the version of him that deserved to live? He wanted to feel beautiful. He wanted to feel free from the pressures of the world around him. And for a moment, he did. But the nagging thought of Emma's return, a possibility that lingered like a shadow, kept him rooted to the spot. He heard the sound of a car pull up outside, the familiar engine of Emma's vehicle. His stomach lurched. She was home. The clock on the wall seemed to tick louder in the sudden silence, each passing second a reminder of the impending confrontation. Just as Alex was beginning to calm his racing heart, a knock echoed through the apartment. His blood ran cold. He had been so certain Emma was on her way home, but this knock, soft, hesitant, came from the front door. Who could it be? His thoughts raced as he quickly glanced at the clock. Emma was definitely supposed to be home soon. Was it her? Was it someone else? His immediate instinct was to tear off the dress and run to the bathroom, but he froze. His mind raced through all the possible scenarios. He couldn't just ignore the knock, especially not when it was so late. With a shaky breath, he walked cautiously to the door, his heels clicking louder than usual on the hardwood floor. His reflection in the hallway mirror caught his eye for a split second. The girl staring back at him seemed more real than ever before, more vibrant, more confident. But she wasn't supposed to be here, not in front of anyone else. Alex opened the door slowly, revealing the visitor on the other side. Standing there was his neighbor, Mrs. Williams, a woman in her late 60s with kind eyes and an ever-present smile. She had always been friendly, often stopping by to check in on him. "Oh, Alex, I hope I'm not interrupting anything," she said with a warm chuckle. "I just wanted to return the casserole dish I borrowed the other day." Alex's breath caught in his throat. He quickly adjusted his posture, trying to hide the obvious signs of his transformation. The dress, the heels, the makeup, everything screamed that something was off. His fingers clutched the doorframe, panic washing over him. What should he do? What if she noticed? "No problem at all, Mrs. Williams," Alex replied with a forced smile. His voice was higher than usual, almost unrecognizable. He cleared his throat, doing his best to sound like his old self. "Just give me a second." As he closed the door, his mind raced. Should he change quickly? Pretend everything was fine? Mrs. Williams didn't seem to suspect anything, but his heart was pounding in his chest. Every nerve was on edge, every instinct telling him to get out of sight before anyone else arrived. But just as he turned to rush back to the bedroom, he heard a voice behind him. "Is everything all right, Alex?" Mrs. Williams's voice was softer now, more concerned. "You don't usually sound like this. Are you sure you're okay?" Alex's stomach churned. The door was closed, and he was still trapped in the hallway. He couldn't let her see him like this, not like this. But the look in her eyes, The way she tilted her head made it clear she knew something was wrong. His mind screamed at him to explain, to pull off the wig and remove the makeup, but the fear of being caught in his most vulnerable moment overwhelmed him. He had no words, no escape. "I'm fine, really," he managed, but his voice wavered. There was no convincing her, not now. Mrs. Williams could sense the lie in his tone, the unease in his posture. She was older, wiser. She could tell when someone was hiding something. The tension between them hung thick in the air, and Alex was certain she had seen enough to suspect something was deeply wrong. Mrs. Williams took a small step back, her eyes never leaving him. "I'll leave the dish right here, then. If you ever need someone to talk to, Alex, don't hesitate. You've got a lot of people who care about you." With a final, searching look, she turned and walked away, leaving Alex standing there, trembling. He closed the door behind her, letting out a long breath he hadn't realized he was holding. It felt like the room was spinning. For a moment, he felt lightheaded, as though the world was shifting beneath him. That close call had left him rattled, but there was no time to dwell on it. Emma would be home soon, and the fear of her walking in and seeing him like this, the person he'd kept hidden for so long, was almost too much to bear. The second Alex heard the familiar sound of Emma's car pulling into the parking lot outside, his heart lurched again. This time, it wasn't a knock on the door. It was her, his girlfriend, his world, coming home to an apartment filled with secrets. He couldn't hide anymore. There was no way to undo the transformation. The door opened with a creak, and there she was, Emma, standing in the doorway, a soft smile on her face. But that smile faltered the moment her eyes met Alex's. For a second, time stood still. Emma's gaze lingered on him, taking in the sight of Alex dressed as a woman, his pink dress, the makeup, the wig, everything that was supposed to be hidden now exposed. "Alex, what is this?" Emma's voice was soft, almost a whisper. The shock was evident on her face, but there was no anger, no judgment, just confusion. Alex stood frozen, his mind racing for an explanation. Any explanation. "Emma, I can explain. I didn't mean for you to find out like this. It's just, sometimes I need to be this way. I need to feel like myself." His voice cracked, betraying the fear that gripped him. Emma stepped forward, her expression softening. She reached out gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've been hiding this from me?" she asked, her voice laced with hurt, but not anger. "Why didn't you tell me, Alex? Why did you feel like you had to keep it a secret?" The tears welled up in Alex's eyes, the weight of the moment crashing down on him. He had been so terrified of losing her, of being rejected, that he had kept this part of himself locked away. But now, as Emma stood before him, her face a mixture of concern and love, it seemed like the world had shifted once more. The woman he had feared would reject him was here, accepting him in a way he hadn't imagined possible. "I didn't know how to tell you," Alex confessed, his voice trembling. "I didn't want to lose you." Emma shook her head, her eyes gentle. "You never had to hide this from me. I love you, Alex. All of you." As Emma took Alex's hand, the tension that had held him captive for so long seemed to melt away. There was no judgment, no condemnation, only love. But in that moment, Alex realized something deeper. His secret, the one he had kept hidden for so long, no longer had the power to destroy him. It wasn't about the clothes or the makeup. It was about accepting all parts of himself and allowing the people he loved to see him fully. Emma pulled him into an embrace, her warmth wrapping around him like a protective cocoon. Alex didn't have to explain everything at once. The journey he had taken, his fears, his transformation, was part of his truth, and Emma was willing to accept it, just as she had always accepted him. For the first time, Alex felt free. He had been living in the shadows for so long, but now, as Emma held him close, he knew the truth had set him free. As Alex pulled away slightly, looking into Emma's eyes, he realized something. The moment he had dreaded for so long, the moment of being caught, of revealing his secret, had not been the disaster he feared. It had been the moment of liberation. The dress that had once felt like a mask now felt like a symbol of who he was. The makeup, once a hiding place, was now a part of his identity. The woman in the mirror wasn't someone to be ashamed of. She was Alex, and he was ready to be seen by Emma, by the world, and most importantly, by himself. Alex stood there, his body still trembling from the intensity of the conversation with Emma. His heart was pounding in his chest, but not from fear. Now, it was the raw vulnerability that came with finally letting someone in. Someone who had seen him at his most exposed. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was still unresolved, though. Emma's touch was warm, comforting, but there was an undercurrent of hesitation in her eyes. As she held his hand, her gaze kept flicking down to the dress, the heels, the makeup that was still so foreign to her. Alex could sense her thoughts, though she didn't speak them aloud. She was processing, trying to make sense of everything. Her words were kind, but Alex couldn't shake the unease growing between them. "I didn't know it was this important to you," Emma said, her voice quiet. There was no judgment in her tone, but Alex could feel the unspoken weight of the words. Alex swallowed hard, trying to steady his nerves. He opened his mouth to speak but paused. What could he say? The truth. He had already bared his soul, but the words he needed to say felt stuck, choking him. The fear that had once gripped him was no longer about the clothes. It was about Emma seeing him fully, for everything he was, and wondering if she could still love him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was thick with questions, with the unspoken thoughts hanging like a heavy curtain. The silence stretched on, making everything feel more intense. Then, almost like a cruel twist of fate, Alex heard it, the sound of keys jiggling in the lock. His heart skipped a beat. Someone was coming. His mind raced. Who could it be? Had Emma invited someone over without telling him? Was it her family? A friend? Or worse, was it his mother, who knew nothing of this side of him? He glanced nervously at Emma, who seemed just as tense. Her eyes widened as she turned towards the door. She must have heard it too. "Who's that?" Emma asked, her voice laced with confusion and concern. The same panic that had hit Alex now reflected in her face. Was it someone they weren't expecting? "I don't know," Alex muttered, his pulse racing. He wasn't ready for anyone to see him like this, not yet. Not before he fully understood what had just happened between him and Emma. But as the door creaked open, the tension in the air became almost unbearable. The door opened, and in walked someone Alex never expected to see, his mother. Her eyes scanned the room quickly before landing on him. Alex froze. She didn't seem to notice the way he was dressed at first, but her gaze lingered just a little too long, like she was reading a page she didn't understand. "Alex! I thought I'd find you here," her voice trailed off as she looked between him and Emma. "I didn't realize you had company." Alex's heart thudded painfully in his chest. He could feel the heat rise in his cheeks, the fear creeping up his spine. He hadn't seen his mother in weeks, and now, of all times, she walked in at the most inopportune moment. Emma shifted uncomfortably, clearly trying to piece things together, but before she could say anything, Alex's mother spoke again, this time with a strange, knowing look in her eyes. "Well, I'm glad to see you're comfortable, Alex," she said, a slight smirk tugging at her lips. "But don't you think it's time you face the truth? The truth about who you really are?" Alex's breath caught in his throat. His mother's words hit him like a tidal wave. The truth? What did she mean by that? How could she possibly know anything about the secret he'd been hiding for so long? Emma stood beside him, her eyes darting between him and his mother, confusion clouding her expression. But there was something else, something strange about the way his mother was looking at him. She wasn't angry, she wasn't shocked. It was almost like she had been waiting for this moment, waiting for him to be exposed. Alex felt his mind spinning. He had thought he was the one keeping secrets, but now it seemed as though his mother had known all along. "Mom, how did you know?" Alex stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "How could you possibly know about this?" His mother smiled, a faint, almost unreadable expression on her face. "Oh, sweetheart, I've known for quite some time. In fact, I've been planning this for years." Alex's eyes widened. "Planning what? What are you talking about?" Emma's confusion deepened, her face a mixture of surprise and concern. Alex wasn't sure whether she was more shocked by his mother's presence or by the strange familiarity she seemed to have with him, dressed in a way he'd never imagined. "Alex," his mother continued, her voice soft but firm, "I've always known you were different. And now, I think it's time you embraced it fully. It's time you stopped hiding and started living the life You were always meant to live. Before Alex could respond, his mother's next words hit him like a ton of bricks. I've arranged everything for you. I've set up a whole new life, one where you can finally be the person you've always wanted to be. Emma looked at Alex, her face pale. What are you saying? She asked, her voice shaking with disbelief. Alex's mind reeled. What was happening? What had his mother done? Had she orchestrated all of this, his transformation, his crossdressing, his secret identity, without him even knowing? Why? Alex whispered, his voice cracking. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ever tell me that this was your plan all along? His mother stepped forward, her expression now serious. Because, Alex, you were never supposed to fight it. You were always meant to embrace it. This is who you were meant to be. And just as Alex opened his mouth to respond, a loud crash echoed from the other room. The sound of breaking glass, followed by hurried footsteps, brought everything to a standstill. Alex's heart raced. The tension in the air grew thicker. And then, from behind him, he heard a voice that froze him to the core. Alex! What's going on here? It was Emma's voice, but it wasn't the Emma he knew. The transformation was complete.